Syrian government forces recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra, driving out Islamic State jihadists. Crushing victory for Bernie Sanders as he hammers rival Hillary Clinton in 3 states, though he still trails far behind her in the delegate count. And Pope Francis, in his Easter message, calls on believers not to forget the migrants fleeing from war, condemns the terrorists behind the Brussels attacks. Good afternoon and welcome back to I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Tjong. In a major symbolic blow to the Islamic State, Syrian government forces say they have recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra. The jihadists took the famed UNESCO World Heritage Site, known as the Pearl of the Desert, last May and made headlines by gleefully blowing up many of its ancient ruins. After a battle overnight, military sources say regime forces have driven out the Islamic State and that the jihadists fled to the east. I-24's Sam Israel has more.
Syrian forces have driven out the Islamic State jihadis from the historic town of Palmyra. After 4 weeks of fighting, regime forces first captured the town of Al-Amiria on the northern outskirts of Palmyra. An official from the Syrian military said that Al-Amiria was Daesh's gateway into the city. On Sunday, Syrian forces entered the city itself and have now driven the Islamic State jihadis back.
We are still destroying the terrorists, especially in the western districts of Palmyra, and they are now withdrawing, using large convoys and driving away from the city.
Not only has this opened up much of the territory the Islamic State controls in Syria, but reports indicated that over 400 ISIS soldiers were killed in this campaign. This makes the loss of Palmyra the greatest defeat ISIS has faced on the ground. However, the Islamic State and many skirmishes between them and the Syrian forces have destroyed many historical relics. In Damascus, the head of the Syrian Antiquities said he hoped that a thorough assessment of damage to the historic site could take place in a few days.
As an archaeological site, we have reached the final stages of liberating the archaeological city. It seems the road of Deir az-Zor, Damascus, and the 3 main directions are besieged. Our expectations and hopes are that it is a matter of 1, 2, or 3 days that everything will be over.
In Iraq, government security forces have continued their offensive on the city of Mosul, which started on Thursday. Iraqi forces have been backed by Kurdish forces and airstrikes by the United States, which killed the Islamic State's Minister of Finance on Friday.
A relentless air campaign and support for forces in Iraq and Syria who are fighting ISIL on the ground has allowed us to take approximately 40% of the populated territory that ISIL once held in Iraq. We're supporting Iraqi security forces who are beginning to put pressure on the ISIL stronghold of Mosul, and we will not stop until ISIL's safe havens are destroyed.
Iraqi forces publicly announced that they hope to retake Mosul this year and advance along the Tigris River. However, many question in private whether the army, which partially collapsed when the Islamic State overran a third of the country in June, will be ready in time.
Now to the latest in the investigation into the Brussels terror attacks claimed by Islamic State that killed 31 people and injured more than 250. Belgian prosecutors say they have charged 3 men with terror offenses over the suicide bombing attacks at the main airport and the subway station. With police stretched thin, Belgian officials have cancelled the March Against Fear planned for today out of concerns over security. I-24's Shelby Weiner has more on the investigation.
Belgian prosecutors have continued vigorously making arrests in the wake of last week's deadly terrorist attack. Police have charged a man, Chaffot, as a key suspect, thought to be the highly sought-after Man in the Hat. He was detained along with several others on Thursday in a police raid. In a separate Thursday arrest, a second man, Abu Bakr A, was charged with participating in terrorist activities. Many others have been detained by Belgian police. Then on Saturday, Italian forces arrested an Algerian suspected in connection with both the attacks in Brussels and Paris. Belgian police are working overtime as the raids and arrests continue. A March Against Fear planned for Sunday was postponed after requests by the mayor and interior minister to avoid further straining the police.
And we understand fully, the emotions that our citizens, but also we have. And we understand fully that everybody wants to express these feelings, but it's our responsibility that this can be done in the best circumstances possible. And that's why we invite our citizens to report this manifestation to a later date.
On Thursday, Belgium lowered its security alert one level, but police are still prevalent on the streets. Organizers of the march said thousands were expected to attend the protest, which was meant to start at the Bourse, a central square which has become a significant place of mourning.
There is a feeling that life goes on, but it's weighing on our hearts. I was impressed when walking from the Grand Plateau to come here, and about 50 meters from here, it is all silence and calm. I told my daughter there is such a terrible weight of emotion that I felt very strongly.
Brussels became the scene of Europe's third deadly terrorist attack in the last 15 months. After bombs exploded in two parts of the city, Tuesday's blast killed over 30 and wounded some 300 people.
The controversial shooting incident in the West Bank on Thursday evening, in which an Israeli soldier reportedly approached a neutralized terrorist and opened fire at point-blank range, continues to cause an uproar throughout Israel. The soldier, who said he acted out of fear the terrorist had on an explosive belt he was going to detonate, was arrested and may be charged with murder. Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued statements condemning his action as a violation of the IDF's ethical code. But other politicians have sprung to the soldier's defense. The issue also featured in today's weekly cabinet meeting. I24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev sent us this report.
Well, the Hebron incident has sparked an intense political debate here in Israel and a divide between those who condemn the soldier and believe his behavior is incompatible with the IDF moral values, and on the other hand, politicians who are supporting the soldier and are warning from quick judgment. Right-wing politicians such as Avigdor Lieberman from the Israel Beitenu and Naftali Bennett from the Jewish Home have accused the political leadership, the military leadership, and the media of a quick judgment and of abandoning the soldier. They are endorsing a public campaign by the soldier's family, but we see Netanyahu gradually softening his statements, but at the same time, Netanyahu launches a harsh political attack inside the weekly cabinet meeting, with Netanyahu and fellow Likud ministers attacking Naftali Bennett, saying that he's trying to make political gains on the back of the IDF moral values. Let's hear what Netanyahu had to say at the beginning of the meeting.
The undercutting of the IDF morality is outrageous and improper. The IDF soldiers, our children, are keeping high standards of moral values while they are courageously battling bloodthirsty killers in difficult operational conditions. I am sure that in any case, including the current case, the probe is taking all conditions into account, those and others. We must all back the IDF Chief of Staff, the IDF and our soldiers who are keeping us safe.
Saturday was a big day for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders in his quest for the Democratic presidential nomination. He won sweeping caucus victories in Hawaii, Washington, and Alaska, continuing to pick up the majority of young voters, which has been his hallmark of his campaign. While Sanders told voters he has a path to victory, it will still be very difficult for him to beat his rival, Hillary Clinton. She's leading the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist by 800 delegates, leaving him with the near impossible task of having to win 75% of the remaining delegates.
Let me begin by thanking the people of Alaska for giving us a resounding victory tonight. And I believe that our campaign is the campaign of energy, of momentum, which will lead to a large voter turnout in November and victory. All right, are you ready for a news alert? We just won the state of Washington. That is what momentum is about.
Pope Francis on Easter Sunday spoke out against the rejection of migrants and refugees in Europe, saying the Easter message invites Christians not to forget the men and women fleeing from war, hunger, poverty, and social injustice. The Pope also condemned the terrorists who marred the so-called Holy Week leading up to Easter with the deadly attacks in Brussels, saying they are profaning God's name. Well, those were the latest reports. Join us again in 20 minutes for more. Of course, for any updates online on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you for watching.